Hello. Today I'll be explaining the menu functions within the Visual Products HyperTap 2 that is specifically for the Arriflex cameras, the Arriflex 16SR 1, 2, and 3 cameras. We use the same electronic module within those three cameras. We do use a different module within the Aton and the Cinema Products cameras. So this tutorial is only for the Arriflex application for the Visual Products HyperTap 2 high definition camera with the serial digital interface or SDI output. So provided with your camera is a menu dongle that when plugged in gives you access to the menus. I'm going to go ahead and access that menu now by pressing in on the end of the joystick. That's going to bring the main menu up. There's a number of applications within the main menu and the sub-menus under that that are nothing that you're going to use with this video assist camera. The electronics contained within are used for a number of applications, some of which being machine vision, industrial use, security use. These cameras are used in a number of different things. So that being the case, there are items and functions within the menu and submenu within these cameras that you will not be using in a video assist application, and I'll explain those as we go. The first item, which you will not be using, is main menu number 1, which is lens, and that is actually a link that takes one into a connection that would be established between the camera electronics and an electronically controlled specialty lens for machine vision use. So we won't be using that. We're going to leave that in the manual position. This next function, this next submenu, which is exposure, you will be using and you can adjust. Now if you notice, next to this item, next to exposure, there's a small arrow. Anytime you see an arrow next to an item in the main menu or submenu, you can press down on the joystick once, click it, and get into that submenu for adjust. We send these cameras out in 1/25th of a shutter. I would suggest you leave it there or in auto. The other shutter speeds don't seem to react well with the motion picture film cameras mirror shutter, spinning mirror shutter. So we leave them in the 1/25th position. They seem to work pretty well. In AGC, and sending them out in the setting of around 7 or 8, it seems to mock pretty well what the dynamic range is of most motion picture film. So leaving it in mid-range, especially if you're operating off of a monitor on a rig, Steadicam, crane, whatever, if you have that AGC setting too high and you have a change in light, you lose a light on set, sun goes under a cloud or whatever, that AGC will pretty quickly adjust for that, and you might not notice it on screen. By leaving it lower around the middle of the setting, somewhere around 7 or 8, you will notice on the monitor if you change light, if something happens in front of the camera that changes. So that's it on the explanation for automatic gain control. Sensitivity up, I would leave that in the off position. That will fool you as well, going from different light sources. Brightness, we send it out around 50 to 60. That seems to work pretty well for most applications. You can, of course, adjust that up more if you want, but it starts getting pretty noisy when you start getting too high. DWDR, wide dynamic range, you can toggle that on, off, auto. I tend to leave it off because it will pull too much out of the shadows, and if you run into a situation where you have a talent coming into a light or something like that, and you've lost that light, it can actually sort of reach in and illuminate where you might have a much deeper fall off in light on the film when you get it back. So I would leave that in the off position. Defog is a function that's used more in machine vision And security, you want to leave that in the off position. Okay, I'm going to go back to the main menu now. I'm going to push down on my joystick. Um, Backlight, I would leave that off. You can experiment with it, but in some of these settings, especially in backlight compensation or in backlight clipping, it's going to do some things on screen that are not going to be very good. It's going to really harm watchability. I would just leave that in the off position. White balance, I send them out in auto white. There's a number of things you can do. You can white card and go from there. So you can set your automatic white control via a white card and set it off of that. You can choose indoor at probably about 3200 Kelvin, outdoor at 5600. You can adjust manual white balance by tweaking your reds and blues and put it wherever you want. I always send these out in auto white and I leave it at that. Next submenu item, day and night. We send them out in color. If you wish, you can toggle to black and white if you want to remove all color from the monitor. That way, if you're in a situation where color on the monitor becomes distracting to a client or a viewer, and you just want them to concentrate on composition or acting or scene, then you can just toggle to black and white. I would not leave it in exterior or auto because in auto, if you get into a lower light situation, it will automatically toggle into black and white, and that can be distracting. I would leave it in color mode. It gets a little bit noisy when the light level drops, but it's not too bad. Okay, noise reduction is just that. It's an automatic. It's an automatic function, and it does that. It just tries to reduce noise on screen or video noise as the light level goes down. So I usually leave that in the middle positions for both a two-dimensional noise reduction and three-dimensional noise reduction. Seems to work well. Okay, in special, I'm going to click into special, this submenu. Now, camera title, this is something that some people will use and some people don't. In cameras, the cameras for the 16SR3 that we send to customers to install, both for the original Arri elbow, the optical elbows that come out of the handle, or in the case of the IBS unit, or handle tap, as we've been known to call it, we will create a digital serial number for the camera and do a quality control photo of an image on screen from that camera before it goes out. So we have evidence here that the optics are clean, the camera works well. So I'm going to, now that I have camera title turned on, you see the arrow next to it. I'm going to press down on my joystick. I'm going to go into camera title. Now, if you look at the bottom line, there's so many characters that you can place in there. And you see that first position in the lower left flashing. And if you look up into the text block, you see the A flashing. I'm going to press on my the end of my joystick. I can place that A. I'm going to just do a random name here, Ace. And now, in the upper left corner of the block, there's something hidden. I arrow over there, see that white flashing block? That is a space. So now I've just imparted a clear space. Now I can go back here and I can place my next word. Okay, so I've got Ace camera on screen. Now I'm going to joystick myself down. I'm going to click on POS, position. And now what I can do is I can position this title anywhere I want on the screen, and it's always going to be married in the video over the picture. It's certainly not going to be on film. It's not going to be anything you're going to see in the viewfinder. It's just going to be on the video monitor. So you can place that wherever you want it, and once you have it placed somewhere, wherever that might be, you can press on the joystick and place it. So now I've positioned it. Now I'm going to go over here to end. I'm going to click on end. And before we go into these other special submenu items, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the main menu by hitting return. And once I save and end, you'll see that menu will come up. See, Ace Camera came up. Okay, so now I'm going to go back into special, my submenu number 7 special, and I'm going to go back into camera title. And what I'm going to do is show you one more thing. If you wanted to clear out or just edit what you've done, what you can do is go over here to the arrows. See my left arrow flashing? I can arrow back to whatever letter it is that I want to remove and replace. Okay, so now I've got my position that I want to replace. Now I'm going to arrow all the way up to my blank space. Boom, that's gone. Now I can go back and I can replace that letter, but I must arrow back to that original position. I must get back there because you can see right now I'm flashing into the A. So I'm going to arrow back over. I move myself back up on the screen and I place that C back in there. Okay, now I am going to clear that entire camera title just by hitting clear. Boom, it's gone. Now I'm going to end, get out of this. I'm going to turn the camera title off. The customer can change that, make that whatever they want later. Digital effect is just that. I'm going to go in there. Sub menu item number 2. This is the one you're going to use most, only if you rig the camera. If you do something, you're going to rig the camera where you might want to rotate the image, mirror the image, flip the image, something so it can be viewed normally on screen. If you're doing some strange orientation of the camera body with your crane or rig or whatever you're doing, so that's all available there. That's all available under D-Effect or Digital Effect. So I'm going to get out of there now, pushed on that. Both motion and privacy. These are items, motion, privacy, defect, RS-485. These are all functions of this particular electronic module that would be used in applications other than a video assist on a motion picture film camera. So I would suggest you leave those alone. If you do get in and change any of those, then you might want to remember where they started and change them back, because certainly privacy and motion, you can just leave those in the off position. RS-485 is an output signal type. You're going to want to leave that as it is. Baud rate at 38,400. Leave that as it is. Defect is just that, and it's really about dead pixel correction. There is an auto in dead pixel correction that can be accessed. That's really only going to happen if you were to develop a dead pixel in the camera itself. It's not going to help you with any monitor issues. So I would just leave that in the off position. If someday, for whatever reason, the video assist camera, the chip does develop a dead pixel, then there's a number of things you can do in there to try to alleviate that issue. But we're going to just leave that in the off position for now. Go back to the special submenu. And now I'm going to return to the main menu. Now, under Adjust, I'm going to go in, and this is where you can choose auto sharpness, which is where we leave it, or you can certainly choose a sharpness level, and that's up to you. We usually leave it in the auto position. It seems to work pretty well. Monitor is always going to be an LCD or liquid crystal display. Nobody is using a cathode ray tube monitor anymore, so leave it in LCD or liquid crystal display. LSC. LSC is linear contrast stretched. It makes a minor difference in contrast. it's not going to really apply here, and it's not going to be that noticeable, so I would leave it alone. Video out, you can toggle back and forth between NTSC and PAL. We send the cameras out in the PAL position because that puts the output at 50 hertz per second, which seems to work really the best with standard frame rates of 24 or 25 frames per second. If you're going to be out on a job where you know you're going to be doing multiple different frame rates, you might want to experiment prior, before loading any loaded magazines on the camera, and just look at how PAL or NTSC work. And you can also maybe change the shutter adjust in the main menu under exposure, which is main menu sub number 2. You can maybe play with the shutter speed adjust a little bit and see if that can alleviate any flickering issues you might run into with offbeat frame rates with the motion picture film camera. We've found that under adjust the video outputs of PAL at 50 hertz or NTSC at 60 hertz, those outputs don't seem to play as much of an issue anymore with receiving equipment, with monitors and recording equipment, because most newer equipment will auto detect and work with either the 50 hertz or 60 hertz input. So it's up to you where you put it, or where you want to go with either the PAL or the NTSC out. We always send these cameras out with the output at PAL. It seems to work very well. So I'm going to return to the main menu, and under exit, I'm going to save and end. If you should ever run into a situation where your camera is just not functioning well, under this main menu sub item, under exit, you can toggle over to reset, and you can reset everything. And that puts the camera back to its stock position. And then you can go back in and set up from there. So again, lens and manual, exposure, 1/25th of a second, AGC 7 or 8, brightness somewhere up around 60. Backlight off, automatic white balance, day and night to color, noise reduction. You can leave that one alone. Special, again, the main thing you're going to use there is camera title. You might want to change language. It has a number of languages available. You have Chinese, German, French, Italian, Spanish, Polish, Russian, Portuguese, Turkish, Korean, Japanese, Hebrew, Arabic. We send them out in English, unless we know exactly where they're going. I just sent one out the other day. Change it to German. The camera was going to Berlin. RS-485, that's an output signal. We're not going to even play with that because we don't need to change that in this instance. Okay, return, adjust. That's all where it should be. Going to return. I'm going to go back into exposure and check. Let me see. Shutter is good. Return. White balance. Okay, we're good there. I'm going to save it and end it. Here you go. You might want to go into experiment, but for the most part, this is going to get you going. Thanks. Good luck.